Doamnelor și domnilor, bine v-am regăsit la Eurodicționar. Fără îndoială că într-o serie de emisiuni importante, o prezență cu adevărat importantă în vremurile pe care Republica Moldova le traversează acum este aceea ambasadorului Uniunii Europene în Republica Moldova. O personalitate care a fost în permanență prezentă, este în continuare prezentă și al cărei cuvânt a avut întotdeauna impact. Este interesant să vedem în ce măsură domnul Pirkka Tapiola va reuși să aducă lumină în chestiuni care, într-un fel sau altul, în continuare sunt, hai să spunem așa, amestecate în mintea cetățeanului Republicii Moldova. De ce? Pentru că declarații diverse, atitudini diverse, acțiuni diverse, de o parte sau de alta, uneori îi încurcă pe moldovenii în a înțelege care este natura relației corecte a Republicii Moldova cu Uniunea Europeană în acest moment. Pentru că până de curând am aflat că există un vector pro-european oficial asumat de Guvernarea Republicii Moldova printr-un tratat de asociere, acord de asociere și liber schimb al Republicii Moldova cu Uniunea Europeană, pe de-o parte. Pe de altă parte, proaspăt alesul și recent intratul în atribuții președinte al Republicii Moldova face declarații de altă natură, spunând că Moldova nu are beneficii reale de pe urma relației cu Uniunea Europeană. Nu atât declarațiile președintelui ne interesează, cât adevărurile cu privire la relația dintre Republica Moldova și Uniunea Europeană. Acesta e motivul pentru care îi mulțumesc foarte mult domnului Pirkka Tapiola, ambasadorul Uniunii Europene la Chișinău, pentru faptul că a acceptat prezența în această emisiune. Vom purta dialogul în limba engleză pentru că e mai simplu pentru mine, cred că e mai simplu și pentru domnia sa. Manifest încă o dată regretul pentru faptul că nu vorbesc limba rusă, poate că ar fost o limbă mai utilă în acest moment, dar asta este. Acceptați dialogul în engleză. Your Excellency, welcome and thank you very much for being here.
Thank you very much for having me.
I tried to make a short introduction. I'm quite sure that you have understood the...
Fully. I mean, I understand Romanian fluently. I don't feel that I'm fluent enough when I try to speak it, so thank you for doing this in English.
Thank you very much again. Your Excellency, I don't really want to discuss our President's declarations, but the facts themselves. Yes. It has been said by Mr. President, it is true, that he would like to denounce, if the Socialist Party would come to power, he would like to denounce the treaty agreement between the Republic of Moldova and the European Union because, in his opinion, there are no benefits for Moldova in this relationship with the European Union. What do the facts say? I am asking you, are there benefits, are there proofs of these benefits for Moldova on its relationship with the European Union?
I would say that the picture, in fact, on our relations looks quite bright. It looks quite good. I mean, I'll start with the thing which is really the bread and butter issue, which I'm sure that interests people of this lovely country most, and that's simply the development of our trade. 64% of Moldova's exports go to the European Union. This percentage or the volume of exports has been growing. It's been growing in agriculture, it's been growing in wines, it's been growing steadily in terms of industrial products. So I'd say that there the picture is very, very positive. Let me also note that the structure of this trade, I mean the structural trade, the exports to the EU, is approximately the same on both banks of the Dnistr River, which is something which people should note as well. So you see that we are very deeply intertwined. Exports to the EU are growing. We did see last year, for the first time in a long time, that unfortunately imports from the EU to the Republic of Moldova, probably due to internal economic reasons, had declined for the first time. But let me also note that here there's not a terribly bad story for Moldova, because I remember when the association agreement came into force, when it was signed, one of the myths which were put out there and were put out by some media was that the Moldovan market will be flooded by cheap Moldovan,
Exactly.
by cheap EU goods. That hasn't happened. In fact, our imports have slightly gone down. Moldovan exports to the EU have gone up. Trade balance is getting more positive towards the Republic of Moldova. I would also say that through standardization, for instance, and in the agricultural sphere, Moldovan supermarkets, Moldovan shops here are getting better quality goods from inside the country. So just if you look at the trade side, you see a success story.
Well, it is true. None of this can be in any way denied, because these are facts and figures.
These are simple facts and figures.
Right. I would like to somehow enlighten the people to another aspect.
Okay.
Another aspect which has been not once said by a part of the media here, but also by the president, unfortunately. There is also a legend that somehow this agreement or EU itself would force the Republic of Moldova not to have relations with other partners than the EU. For example, it has been said also by Mr. Dodon in Russia that the EU is totally against the relationship between Moldova and Russia. Is there anything in this? Is this a true or a false information?
Well, I don't want to go and start disagreeing with statements of a head of state. I mean, I'm an ambassador. I'm accredited to, I present my credentials to the head of state, and I'm accredited to a president. So I certainly wouldn't want to start commenting that. But I do comment a little bit on the facts. The association agreement and our whole relationship was built with a sort of recipe of openness. We believe in free trade. We believe in openness. A recipe of openness is built upon that recipe. And if you look at it, if you look at what we have something called deep and comprehensive free trade area. Now, I'll focus on the last three letters, the FTA, the free trade area. Free trade, a free trade area is not the same as, for instance, a customs union, which you are in if you're a member of the European Union. It means that none of Moldova's sovereignty gets transferred from Chisinau to Brussels or elsewhere. In addition to that, we've said very consistently that we want to see, and we hope to see, and we encourage and support good relations for the countries of this region, both East and West. Now, I mentioned that we're talking about a free trade area because when you have a free trade area, you can conclude, implement, develop other free trade regimes with all countries of the world, not just with the EU. We, for instance, saw the coming into force of a free trade area between Moldova and Turkey. We welcome this very much. We've been saying very consistently that we want to see that the free trade area within this Commonwealth of Independent States, of which Moldova is part of, works fully, and that Moldova can develop markets, East and West, can develop good political relationship, East and West. It is true that we have a very deep, very ambitious relationship between us and the Republic of Moldova. But that is not an exclusive relationship. It's not a relationship which closes doors. It was, after all, not the EU which put in place trade embargoes against the Republic of Moldova in 2014. We opened markets. There was nothing in our agreement which would have justified closing markets elsewhere. We saw that markets were closed, embargoes were put in place on what I could only say was based on political motivation. Now, that's not something the EU was for. That's something which we have very consistently expressed concern for. We have very consistently said that it's important that all free trade arrangements work and that Moldova's trade volumes grow globally, because we want to see this country succeed.
So from the EU point of view, and this should be known by the Moldovan citizens, there would be no opposition to the initiative of signing also an association treaty with the customs union, for example. Such intention was expressed by the Moldovan president. There would be no contradiction, there would be no opposition on behalf of the European Union.
I don't think that we've been talking about an association. I mean, that if you look at the Eurasian Economic Union, for instance, here the facts are relatively clear. Here we're talking about a customs union. Mm-hmm. And of course, entering a customs union makes having a free trade area with an independent bilateral free trade area with another entity like the European Union impossible. But that's not us saying that. That would mean that Moldova would take the decision at that stage of entering a customs union. And that means that Moldova would lose sovereignty and lose the right for independent trade arrangements with other forces. What we have in place as part of the association agreement, so I think that we need to differentiate between the free trade component and the association agreement. What we have in place is a free trade area, including, and that's the deep and comprehensive part, including a roadmap to facilitate Moldovan exports to the EU by transposing some legislation in terms of standards. Any country which exports to the EU, which will have to comply with EU standards, for instance, in sanitary, phytosanitary standards, others. We've just made it a little bit easier for the Republic of Moldova in that we've put sort of the legislative harmonization into the agreement. We're ready to give, provided that things are implemented and go forward and the work is real. We're giving assistance, both technical assistance, financial assistance in fulfilling these standards, in becoming globalization compatible, if you want to call it that, be able to be stronger in a more modern economy. So ours is a question of openness. If Moldova has a free trade arrangement with China, which is not yet there, with the Russian Federation, with the CIS, that is not against the DCFTA, which we have. If Moldova would join a customs union, especially one with very high external tariffs, well, joining a customs union, of course, means that you are no longer capable of having any of the free trade arrangements you have externally. Then the customs union negotiates on your behalf. But that is not something which is related. It's not something which the EU says. This is just international trade policy law.
And yes, that's perfectly clear. Can we get a bit back? You have pointed out that to Transnistria. You have pointed out that that trade goes as well for the left bank of Dniester River as well as for the right bank.
Yes.
Transnistria has all the benefits, the good benefits, if I may say so, that the whole part of Moldova has.
Yes.
Still, Transnistria is a subject of all sorts of negotiations.
Yes.
There is a discussion about federalization, about somehow revitalizing the old Cossack plan regarding giving Transnistria another status that it's that this one. Would that have any impact on the Moldovan EU relationship? Is there any opinion of the European Union about what is to be, or how it is to be handled, the Transnistrian issue from now on?
Well, I wouldn't want to go very much to sort of past initiatives. I think that the book has been closed on those, and if you look at discussion also on the right bank here in Moldova, it's quite clear that certain things will be very difficult to get consensus on in society. So let me just state what the EU line on this is, and what I think is very important. The EU line is rather clear, and it's the same which, in a way, all 57 OSCE participating states, it's the 5+2 process, is under the auspices of the OSCE. But all the 57 OSCE participating states have very consistently underlined that we are here to support the sovereignty, independence and territorial integrity of the Republic of Moldova, with a special status for Transnistria. So, I mean, this much is clear. Now, there was a meeting, we last year, under the German OSCE chairmanship, it saw some quite, I'd say, even positive steps forward. We had, after a 2-year break, the first formal meeting of the 5+2 process, something called the Berlin Protocol was signed. It had, I think, it had in it a package of what we'd call small steps, concrete steps, win-win solutions, which would both improve the life of people on the left bank, but also would be win-wins to the right bank. These were not status related, but they were there to build confidence. And there's been an agreement among the 5+2 participants to move forward in this vein. Now, there was recently a meeting between the newly elected president, President Dodon, and the de facto leader of the Transnistrian region. And while there was a lot of discussion before that, if you look at what came out of that meeting, it stayed very much within the parameters of the Berlin Protocol. Now, I do think that it is important that there is a vision on different sides, and that there's a vision which is broadly agreed between the government, society, different parts of administration, parliament, on a vision how to solve this conflict, especially on a vision of what would that special status look like, because without the special status I don't think it functions. That vision, of course, needs to flow out of what will be seen as legitimate, what will be possible, what will work to support the viability of the Moldovan state, what will be inclusive to the population and build the necessary buy. I don't want to put labels on how that looks like, on what that should be called. But what I do want to underline, it's very important that it is something which you have broad consensus. And that broad consensus in society needs to be there. And then that will help the Republic of Moldova act within the internationally recognized settlement format, the 5+2 format, which is, as I said, under the chairmanship of the OSCE, but where you have also Moldova's most important neighbors, Ukraine, the European Union, other key stakeholders, the Russian Federation, which of course has a very, very big role in all of this, the United States, and the 5+2 is the only format in which a solution can be found. It needs to be found reflecting something which will be first and foremost acceptable to the sides and which will bring benefit to the populations on both banks of the Dnistro, and which will enjoy broad support. Ideal solutions are never found, of course, but which will enjoy broad support among the citizens of the Republic of Moldova.
True, but even if we consider that the 5+2 format is the best to keep the negotiations under, some have already noted that there are 3 changes that happened almost at the same time. A new leader in Tiraspol, a new president in Chișinău, and the Austrian presidency of the OSCE, which will follow the German.
All very much scheduled.
True, but would someone try to speculate on these changes to somehow bring some modifications? I don't know, is this a conspiracy? All things will be smoothly going on. You know, in such places and in such times, conspiracy always comes up.
People so love to read conspiracies into everything. I think that what you can certainly see in terms of the OSCE, we have a rotation of chairmen in office. They stay for 1 year. Germany was there. We just had the OSCE the new OSCE special representative who's dealing with the Transnistrian situation, Ambassador Heim, an old friend of mine, visiting here. I see very clearly that the OSCE, and there's not much sort of difference, or not a big break between the German chairmanship, the Austrian chairmanship. They're working based on the Berlin Protocol. They're working towards what, and I think Ambassador Heim said it as well, towards an output-based process based on building confidence, small steps. I think it is important that when there's work on a vision, there is sometimes a feeling that people expect things to be imposed from the outside. I think that one needs to have real domestic discussion. And I'm not meaning, I mean, on the right bank, here in Chișinău, and I'm not meaning that discussion cannot be based on winner takes all, my view wins. What is where you manage to find that consensus? How does the government, and of course the competences in moving forward on this, are first and foremost with the government. How's the government, the president, the parliament, civil society, think tanks, others? What's the vision which they see is the best for the country?
Well, it would be interesting to somehow have the good impression that the vision comes from the inside, but unfortunately speaking about the fact that some would expect that the solution would be imposed from the outside, the feeling is that some of the actors get their inspiration from the outside, at least in this Transnistrian matter, because Mr. Krasnoselski seems to get his inspiration from Moscow, Mr. Dodon also from Moscow, others from Brussels, others from Bucharest, others from, I don't know. So it's quite complicated to...
I would say that there are sometimes situations, and I'm not going to start saying where everybody gets their inspiration, but sometimes I have a little bit of this feeling that everybody seems to be looking for inspiration. But the Republic of Moldova is a sovereign, independent country. And fundamentally, any vision which will work has to be one which is firmly grounded here and which reflects the realities of the country and is working towards those win-win solutions and which will enjoy broad legitimacy.
So be it. Let me take you to some other topic which is closely related to Brussels and a visit which is already scheduled over there, the visit of the President of the Republic of Moldova, Mr. Dodon. He's expected to go to Brussels. On the other hand, he has shown some reluctance. We've already spoken about that. that the relation between Moldova and the European Union should be carried on. And if it should be carried on, Mr. Dodon has said that some changes should be done, some things should be renegotiated at best. Is there any expectance in Brussels regarding this visit? Is it just a customary visit, or it will have some special accents?
No, let me put it this way. As I mentioned earlier, the relationship between the Republic of Moldova and the European Union is very strategic in nature. It goes very deep. It's very comprehensive. It runs from a reform agenda to trade, and sometimes also you've noticed that I sometimes make statements on, and we as EU heads of mission, on human rights, justice, corruption, things like that. Why do I do this? Because our relationship is so deep and all of these issues are covered in the association agreement. One can say that it is by far the most ambitious and most profound relationship the Republic of Moldova has. So I think that once, and now that there has been a change of head of state, I think it's only normal that in the spirit of this very deep and comprehensive relationship, which also comes with quite a bit of financial assistance and support and so on, that there is a discussion, there are discussions between our leaders and the president, looking at the relationship, looking at where we are, and looking also at the quite good track record of that relationship.
Speaking about this track record, I would ask you to somehow refer to some figures. Let me put it bluntly, money. Money that the European Union offers to Moldova. And on this chapter, I would also like you to, at some point, try to explain to the Moldovan citizens which is actually the conditionality, if there is any, between the European Union financial support for Moldova and the relationship of Moldova with the International Monetary Fund.
There is a quite strong link between the two there. I mean, let me first talk about figures, and in a way I do it a little bit hesitantly because the figures are not that clear-cut. I mean, the annual envelope, I'd give a ballpark figure for a longer time. The annual envelope of assistance, bilateral assistance from the European Union to the Republic of Moldova is in the ballpark of 100 million, plus minus, depends a little bit on the year. Now, this comes from all kinds of programs, some very concrete. You see some road constructions, you see the Ungen Chisinau pipeline coming up there. You see confidence building happening between the two banks of the Dnistra River. You see water supplies. I mean, we were in Ishparena opening for the first time a really well-functioning freshwater or drinking water plant last summer. And these are the kind of things which don't go as so-called budget support, and they haven't been affected in any case on what I'm going to tell later. There's technical assistance, and the cost of that technical assistance is in this package. And then there is what we call budget support. But when I said plus minus, and when I say, for instance, 100 million a year, that's again in average. Some years you in fact disperse a lot less. Some years you may end up dispersing a little bit more. It depends a bit on that. Moldova has been the highest per capita recipient of EU assistance almost anywhere in the world. This shows the depth of our commitment. But that's, again, in terms of commitments. Now, if you look at budget support, and we have a number of programs out there, and we're starting one new, but we're not planning very much budget support at this stage because we need to look that this support really works effectively. I mean, if you look at what we've done through budget support over the years, with the economic stimulation of rural areas. We've built business incubators. We've given small and medium-sized enterprises grants, PARE 1+1, others. We've created new jobs, big quantities of new jobs through this. We have brought fresh water to certain parts. We've looked at energy efficiency, very important. We have started now a budget support program called NPARD, which is basically an agricultural subsidy program. And this money again goes to agricultural producers. I mean, this is great news. This is great to help them get their production up to European standards. These are very concrete things. Then, of course, since you need to help governance, we have had some budget support programs, justice sector, which has been one, where I think where it's been more difficult to quantify the results, but where we've also seen we've paid until now of the justice sector budget support. We have paid only 2 tranches, the initial non-variable tranche and partially the second tranche. I say partially because we were not very sort of pleased with the implementation of certain very important things of the policy matrices. This was already done in 2014, by the way, let me note. We have not since late 2014 up till December 2016, so for nearly 2 years, there were no budget support disbursements to the Republic of Moldova. We all know the 1 billion case, we know the banking crisis. We saw that there were big risks of paying funds to the Moldovan budget, and we put in place a condition. Because there's in budget support something called a general condition as well, which is macrofinancial stability. We said once you get an IMF program agreed with by the board of the IMF, we will be in a position to say, okay, we can trust the macrofinancial framework we're in. Again, it will be safe to do those payments. I have to say that with the IMF program, the World Bank did the same at that stage. With the IMF program, in terms of prior actions, a lot of very useful things in terms of banking sector governance were done. The program was put in place in November 2016. There will be a first review of the program in the first part of this year. And let me say, if the program gets off track, well, that will affect our propensity to pay as well. It would also affect the macrofinancial assistance package, which is currently being negotiated. So I think that there's a very clear conditionality. But this is not the only conditionality. In addition to that, we have, on every budget support program, we have something called policy matrices, which means that when we make a disbursement decision on, we look not just at how's the macroeconomic framework working, is the budget clarified. First and foremost, we look at the specific conditions. Have those things which were agreed, have they been done and paid by first from the Moldovan budget? And only then we will, in a way, refund the money. If they haven't been done or if there are quality issues, and we take external evaluators to look at that, then it is very likely that we are not going to pay 100%, or then if there are shortcomings, we don't pay 100%. We can pay 90%, 80%, 60%, 50%. I mean, not of what we had promised. It's very much based on how successfully things go forward. For instance, we haven't evaluated, there are we would have and we couldn't move forward because of the banking sector crisis, waiting for an IMF agreement and so on. So if you look at the justice sector budget support program, one which has, I know sometimes, of course, quite a bit of criticism. We have, for the last sort of 2 tranches, those payments haven't been made yet. The evaluation's not finished. We need to look at what has been done, but also there's this sort of general feeling. Is there a feeling in society that the justice sector is really progressing? That's going to have a big effect as well, to whether we can, how much we can, and so on. Where do you find the balance of, okay, laws have been adopted, but are they implemented? Is the justice sector functioning in the right way? So somehow we've got into this discussion in this country sometimes that where have EU funds gone? What has, we don't see the effects and so on. Well, I can assure you that where we don't see the effects, where we don't see concrete changes, where we don't see steps forward, especially in terms of budget support, we will not be making those payments. So when we talk about around 100 million a year, that 100 million a year does not mean that we pay 100 million a year. And it does not mean that all of it is just sort of grant funding. For instance, the road projects, others, the biomass heating projects which have gone through UNDP, by the way, a great thing for schools, very concrete, very warm, bringing warmth, improving the life, creating jobs, environmentally friendly, using local fuel. These projects are concrete, but then, for instance, technical assistance projects, what we can do is to put in place expertise, but then comes the question for the country to use that expertise. So, I mean, it's rather complex, and you see that there are many more levels of conditionality than people often realize.
We are slowly getting to the end of our discussion now. 2 things I still have in mind. I don't know if we can somehow fit them in the final 5 minutes.
I'll try to speak fast.
No, I think for one question is one word would suffice. On the whole, you as an ambassador of the European Union, are you rather satisfied or unsatisfied with the current status of relationship and, let's say, results that that Moldova provides for the EU?
I would not be a diplomat if I would use the words yes or no. I mean, in terms of answers, I mean, I would be a very bad diplomat. Let me put it that way, that I think that within the last years, we have moved to a more honest relationship, a relationship which is much more, let's say, performance-based, because it is deeper. We're more sort of connected. And you saw the Council conclusions from last year, where we expressed in February last year quite a bit of concerns. We've had to take, and I've been part of them, had to take quite tough decisions in terms of conditionality of funding. There have been certain concerns on also the human rights field and so on, where we have spoken out loud. So could things have gone better? Most certainly. Have we seen, and the 1 billion case was one which I think shook trust, not just inside the Republic of Moldova. Do I see that we have started taking steps in the right direction and where we want to support, because we want Moldova to succeed? Yes, I would say. I mean, we've seen we saw last year, we saw the priority action roadmap. We saw the implementation of especially legislative steps. We still, of course, talk a lot about what I'd say moving to the quantitative, to the qualitative, moving to the implementation of those reforms. implementation in a way that the population really feels that. We've saw the IMF agreement. Concerns on judiciary, corruption, selective use of justice, potentially. Those concerns very much remain. I would say that the glass is not half empty. I prefer to look at it half full. But I also believe that friends need to be very open, frank, and transparent with each other, because our geopolitics is the European Union. The only geopolitics which we really care about is the geopolitics of successful transition, successful working democracy, consolidating rule of law, and better living standards for people. I think that we still have a lot to do in sort of getting there, but I'm satisfied in that our dialogue on these issues is going forward, and I'm satisfied on that I think there's a very clear idea where, within my counterpart, my friends here, where the EU really stands on a number of issues.
This would be perfect for an ending, but I still have a question.
Go ahead.
Which would require a yes or no answer. Even if...
You're making me scared, Christian.
No, actually, it's an answer to a certain theme which is always brought up by the anti-EU propaganda. I think it would be easy to answer by yes or no. Is the EU moving towards a dissolution, as the anti-EU propaganda says?
No, no, and no.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency.
Thank you.
Mulțumesc foarte mult excelenței sale, domnului Pirkka Tapiola, ambasadorul Uniunii Europene în Republica Moldova, pentru prezența în emisiune. Eu sper că răspunsurile pe care domnia sa le-a dat sunt mai mult decât clare și lămuritoare pentru cetățenii Republicii Moldova în ceea ce privește relația Republicii Moldova cu Uniunea Europeană și beneficiile acestei relații. Mulțumesc încă o dată pentru prezența, excelența voastră, și sper să ne revedem și în alte proiecte de televiziune. Mulțumesc mult! Mulțumesc! Și mulțumesc și dumneavoastră pentru răbdare. Ne vedem peste o săptămână. Până atunci, numai bine!